You're in a conversation. Something inside you wants to speak. Maybe a thought, a truth, a small resistance. But you don't. You smile. You nod. You shrink back into silence. And in that moment, you feel it again. The quiet sting of disappearing. Not because someone silenced you. Because you did. Every time you swallow your truth, something deeper than your voice goes missing. Not just your words, your identity. You stop being a person who acts, decides, stands, and becomes someone who adapts, avoids, obeys. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins slowly, in childhood maybe, at school, at home, moments when you were punished for speaking up, moments when your honesty made others uncomfortable. So you learned to stay quiet, and people praised you for it. You were easy, polite, agreeable. They called it maturity. They called it emotional intelligence. But they never told you the cost. Because silence isn't free. Silence builds walls where bridges should be. It buries your anger, dulls your passion, breaks your boundaries. Over time, it trains your nervous system to believe that your truth is dangerous, and so you stay silent. Again and again, until one day, you realize people don't see you. They see a version of you that never says no, never disagrees, never pushes back, and then comes the final truth. When no one sees you, you start to forget how to see yourself. This isn't about being loud. It's about being real. Because if you don't speak, if you don't choose to be known, you'll vanish behind the very silence you thought would keep you safe. No one wakes up one day and decides to become invisible. You were taught to be quiet when something felt wrong, taught to smile when you wanted to scream, taught that your emotions made others uncomfortable, and making others uncomfortable meant losing love. It started early, maybe at the dinner table, maybe in a classroom, or in a relationship where silence earned safety and honesty triggered chaos. So you adapted. You became the good child, the easy friend, the partner who didn't complain. You traded your truth for peace. You thought you were surviving. But you weren't surviving. You were shrinking. Every time you held back a truth, your mind recorded a message. Who I really am is too much. And that message took root. So you edited yourself, smoothed your edges, softened your voice. You became fluent in the language of pleasing others and completely illiterate in your own needs. But here's the tragedy. You didn't just silence your voice. You silenced the self that voice came from. And the longer you lived this way, the more you forgot what that self even sounded like. This isn't weakness. It's protection. You created silence as a shield. But a shield that's never lowered becomes a coffin. Ask yourself, where did you first learn that being you was a problem? Because that's where the silence began, and to find your voice again. You'll need to go back to that place and break the deal you never agreed to make. There's a kind of pain that doesn't bleed or scream. It's quiet, slow, hidden behind polite smiles and well-timed laughs. It's the pain of being surrounded by people and still feeling completely unseen. And it always begins the same way, by staying silent. You stop sharing what matters to you. You downplay your struggles. You pretend you're fine even when you're breaking. And at first, no one notices. That's the part that hurts the most. People keep talking to you like nothing's wrong. But inside, you're disappearing. Not because they don't care, but because they've never heard the real you. You never let them. And how could they show up for someone who doesn't show up for themselves? It's a bitter truth. The world reflects what you reveal. If you offer only silence, people build a relationship with your mask, not with your soul. And when you finally need someone, really need them, you find yourself alone. Not because you're unlovable, but because you taught them not to look deeper, because you stopped showing them that there was more. The silence you used to keep things safe became the wall that kept everyone out. You ache to be known. But how can anyone truly know you when you've buried your voice so deep even you can't find it? You don't just want to be heard, you want to be felt. But for that to happen, you must be willing to speak, even when it shakes you. Because if you won't reveal your truth, you'll spend your life being loved for a version of you that doesn't exist. What if your silence wasn't politeness? What if it was self-abandonment, disguised as maturity? You didn't mean to disappear. You just wanted to be loved. So you made yourself small enough to fit into what others needed. But here's the truth. You've avoided. Love built on silence isn't love. It's performance, and you're exhausted from the act. Somewhere inside you, there's still a voice, faint, shaky, but alive. It remembers who you were before the world told you to be quiet, before you measured your words, before you traded honesty for harmony. That voice is your anchor, your pulse, your power. It doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be heard by you first. Because if you can't stand in your truth, others will never see you clearly. They'll keep loving the version of you that agrees, the one that smiles on cue, but not the one who breathes fire, who feels deeply, who exists. There's nothing noble about being silent to keep the peace, when that silence is breaking you. You were not born to echo. You were born to speak something that only you can, and you don't need a stage. You just need one moment of courage to say the thing, to set the boundary, to tell the truth, even if your voice shakes like a leaf, because in that moment, something incredible happens. You stop being a shadow, and you start becoming someone you recognize. Say it. Before, the silence turns you into someone you were never meant to be.